to the floor and rolled under the king-sized bed in the honeymoon suite. She pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from giggling, her heart racing with excitement. This was going to be perfect. Brandon would walk in expecting to find his beautiful bride waiting on the bed, and instead she would grab his ankle and scare him senseless. It was exactly the kind of playful joke that had made him fall in love with her, or so she believed. The clock on the nightstand showed 11:47 p.m. The reception had ended 20 minutes ago, and Brandon had said he needed to speak with his mother Patricia about something important before joining Nicole. She didn't mind waiting. After 2 years of dating and 6 months of engagement, what was another few minutes? Nicole stared at the bottom of the mattress above her, still unable to believe this day had finally come. She was Mrs. Brandon Mitchell now. Her mother would have been so proud. When cancer took her mother 3 years ago, Nicole thought she would never feel whole again. Then Brandon appeared at a charity gala, charming and attentive, and slowly brought color back into her world. He supported her through the grief, encouraged her work at the tech company her mother had left her, and made her believe in love again. The suite door clicked open. Nicole held her breath and prepared to spring out. But then she heard heels, 2 sets of them, clicking against the marble entryway. That was strange. She pressed herself flatter against the floor and peered toward the door. 2 pairs of expensive shoes came into view. One pair she recognized immediately, the red-soled designer heels Patricia always wore. The other pair was unfamiliar, black stilettos with silver buckles. Nicole's stomach tightened. What was Brandon's mother doing in the honeymoon suite? And who was with her? "Close the door," Patricia's voice commanded. "We need to talk where no one can hear us." The door closed with a soft click that somehow sounded like a gunshot to Nicole's ears. "This is risky, Patricia," another woman's voice said. Nicole didn't recognize it. The voice was younger than Patricia's, smoother, with an edge of anxiety. What if she comes up? Brandon is keeping her busy downstairs. He'll make sure she stays at least another 30 minutes. That's more than enough time. The 2 women moved further into the room. Nicole could see them now through the gap between the bed skirt and the floor. Patricia sat on the edge of the bed directly above her, causing the mattress to dip slightly. The other woman remained standing. She was tall, with long straight hair and legs that seemed to go on forever. She wore a form-fitting black dress that Nicole now remembered seeing at the reception, though she couldn't recall where. "I can't believe you actually pulled this off," the standing woman said. 2 years. 2 years of watching him play house with her, pretending to love her, sleeping in her bed. "Do you know how hard that's been for me?" Nicole's blood ran cold. "Veronica, please," Patricia said with obvious irritation. "You know this was necessary. Her mother's company is worth $60 million, and she inherited every penny along with those patents. Do you think Brandon could have gotten close to that money any other way? She's not stupid. She would have seen through him in a month if we hadn't planned everything perfectly." I know. Veronica began to pace. Nicole watched her feet move back and forth, each step driving a nail deeper into her chest. "But now it's done, right? Now he can finally—" "Not yet," Patricia cut her off. "Now the real work begins. He needs to get access to her accounts, get his name on the company paperwork, position himself to take control when the time is right. These things take time. 6 months, maybe a year." "A year?" Veronica's voice rose sharply. "You said 6 months maximum when this started. Then it was a year. Then it was after the engagement. Now you're telling me I have to wait another year while he secures our future," Patricia said firmly. "Our family's business is 3 months away from bankruptcy, Veronica. 3 months. Everything my husband built, everything I've worked to maintain since he died, will be gone unless we do this. Brandon understands that. You need to understand it too." Nicole's hands were shaking. Her whole body was shaking. She wanted to scream, to crawl out from under this bed and claw their eyes out, but she couldn't move. It felt like something heavy was sitting on her chest, pressing all the air out of her lungs. "She trusts him completely," Veronica said bitterly. "You should see how she looks at him. It makes me sick." "That's the point," Patricia replied. "That's exactly the point. Her trust is our greatest asset. As long as she believes Brandon loves her, she'll give him anything he asks for. And he's very good at asking." The mattress shifted as Patricia stood up. Nicole watched the red soles of her shoes move toward Veronica. "Now listen to me carefully," Patricia said. "Tonight is critical. Brandon needs to consummate this marriage and establish himself as a devoted husband. After tonight, you will not contact him directly for at least a month. We can't risk any mistakes now that we're so close." I've been his girlfriend for 5 years, Patricia. 5 years. Before he ever knew Nicole Crawford existed. And you're telling me I have to disappear while he plays husband with another woman? I'm telling you that if you ruin this for us, you will have nothing. No Brandon, no money, nothing. Is that what you want? A heavy silence fell over the room. Nicole realized she had stopped breathing entirely. She forced herself to take a small, silent breath. No, Veronica finally said. That's not what I want. Good. Then we understand each other. Now let's get back downstairs before anyone notices we're gone. Brandon should be wrapping up his conversation with those investors right about now. The two women walked toward the door. Nicole heard it open, heard the sound of the hallway outside, heard Patricia's voice one more time. 1 year, Veronica. 1 year and you'll have everything you ever wanted. Brandon, the money, a life without worry. Just be patient. The door closed. Nicole lay under that bed for a long time. She didn't know if it was 5 minutes or 50. At some point, the tears started falling, streaming sideways across her temples and into her hair. They weren't loud, dramatic tears. They were silent, almost peaceful, like rain against a window. Everything made sense now. The way Brandon had pursued her so intensely after her mother's death, when she was vulnerable and desperate for connection. The way he always seemed to know exactly what to say to make her trust him. The way Patricia had welcomed her into the family with open arms, calling her the daughter she never had. It was all a lie. Every moment, every kiss, every whispered promise. She had built her happiness on sand, and now the tide was coming in. Nicole heard the door open again and quickly closed her eyes, keeping her breathing even. Heavy footsteps this time, Brandon's Italian leather shoes, the ones she had bought him as a wedding gift. He walked to the bathroom and she heard water running, heard him humming to himself. Her husband. Her betrayer. When he came back out, Nicole remained perfectly still. She watched his feet approach the bed and stop. Nicole? He called out, a hint of confusion in his voice. Baby, where are you? She didn't move. Didn't breathe. He moved around the room, checking the balcony, the closet, the bathroom again. She heard him take out his phone and dial. She's not here, he said into the phone. Boss. I don't know, maybe she went back to talk to someone. I'll go check the reception hall. He left. Nicole rolled out from under the bed. She stood in the middle of the honeymoon suite, her beautiful white dress covered in dust, her makeup streaked with tears, her heart shattered into a million pieces. But as she looked at herself in the mirror, something else began to emerge from the wreckage. Something cold and sharp and clear. They wanted to destroy her for money? They thought she was just some naive, trusting fool they could manipulate and discard? They had no idea who they were dealing with. Nicole wiped her eyes, straightened her dress, and took a deep breath. Then she pulled out her phone and made 2 calls. The first was to her best friend Denise. The second was to her family lawyer James. We need to meet, she said to both of them. Tonight. I don't care what time it is. Something has happened and I need your help. She ended the calls and looked at herself in the mirror once more. The woman staring back at her was different now. Harder. More focused. Brandon Mitchell wanted to play games with her life? Fine. Game on. Nicole sat in Denise's kitchen at 2 a.m, her wedding dress replaced by borrowed sweatpants and a t-shirt. Her hands were wrapped around a cup of tea that had long gone cold, but she couldn't seem to let it go. The warmth was an anchor, something solid to hold onto while her mind replayed everything she had heard. Tell me again, Denise said. She sat across from Nicole, her eyes red from crying but her voice steady. Denise had been Nicole's best friend since college, and she had never trusted Brandon. Nicole had always dismissed her concerns as overprotectiveness. Now she wished she had listened. His mother brought that woman, Veronica, to the honeymoon suite, Nicole said for the 3rd time. They thought the room was empty. They talked about everything. The plan, the money, how long they've been deceiving me. 5 years, Denise repeated. He's been with this Veronica woman for 5 years? Nicole nodded. Before me. He was already with her when we met. This whole relationship, our entire engagement, the wedding, it was all just a scheme to get my mother's company. Patricia's family business is about to go bankrupt. They needed my money to save it. Those monsters. Denise's voice shook with anger. Those absolute monsters. I knew there was something wrong with him. I knew it. The way he was always so perfect, so smooth, never a single rough edge. Real people have rough edges, Nicole. I know that now. James Chin, no, not that name. James Porter, Nicole's family lawyer, arrived an hour later. He was a serious man in his 50s with gray at his temples and a reputation for being ruthless in court. Nicole's mother had trusted him completely, and he had managed the family's legal affairs for 20 years. First things first, James said, setting his briefcase on the table. Did you sign anything tonight? Any documents at all? Just the marriage license, Nicole said. Brandon mentioned something about adding his name to some accounts tomorrow for convenience, but I didn't sign anything for that. Good. That's good. James pulled out a legal pad and began making notes. Now, tell me about the prenuptial agreement. Nicole felt a flicker of something that might have been hope. Brandon insisted we sign one. He said he wanted to prove he wasn't after my money, that he would be fine if we divorced with nothing. Do you have a copy? Yes, in my safe at home. I need to see it immediately. These things can be tricky. If it wasn't drafted carefully, it might not offer the protection you think. Nicole's stomach turned. His mother's lawyer drew it up. I just signed where Brandon showed me. James and Denise exchanged a look. Don't worry, James said, though his voice was careful. We'll review every word. But Nicole, I need you to understand something. Until we know exactly what we're dealing with legally, you need to be very careful about what you say and do around Brandon. If he realizes you know the truth, he might accelerate his plans or destroy evidence. Evidence? Nicole repeated. What kind of evidence? Everything. Emails, texts, financial records, anything that shows his intent to defraud you. These people are criminals, Nicole. What they're doing isn't just morally wrong, it's illegal. But to prove it, we need documentation. Nicole looked at her cold tea, her mind beginning to shift from shock into something more focused. So I should go back? Pretend nothing happened. For now, yes. I know that's incredibly difficult, but it's the smartest play. Let them think they've won. Meanwhile, we'll be building a case they never see coming. Denise reached across the table and took Nicole's hand. You don't have to do this alone. I'll be with you every step. Nicole squeezed her friend's hand and felt something strengthen inside her. The heartbreak was still there. It would be there for a long time, but it was making room for something else now. Purpose. What about my company? Nicole asked James. How do I protect it? First thing tomorrow, we change every password, every access code. We review who has signing authority and limit it to only you. We inform your board of directors that no changes can be made without a meeting where you are present. My board. Nicole's eyes widened. Patricia got me to add Brandon to the board 3 months ago. She said it would show the investors that we were a united front. James wrote something down quickly. Then we need to move carefully around that. We'll find a way to remove him, but it has to be done properly or he might get suspicious. This is a nightmare, Nicole whispered. It was, James agreed. But nightmares end, and when this one does, you're going to be the one standing. I promise you that. Nicole drove back to the hotel as the sun was coming up. Brandon was asleep in the honeymoon suite, sprawled across the bed like nothing was wrong. Nicole stood in the doorway and watched him for a long moment. How many times had she looked at him with love? How many times had she touched his face, kissed his lips, trusted him with her secrets and her dreams? All those memories felt poison now, like photographs developing wrong, showing the darkness underneath the smiling surface. She went into the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but her jaw was set firm. She thought about her mother, about the company she had built from nothing, about all the employees who depended on it for their livelihoods. Patricia and Brandon thought they could just take it. They thought Nicole was nothing but a grieving orphan they could manipulate. They were wrong. Nicole washed her face, applied enough makeup to hide the worst of the damage, and practiced her smile in the mirror until it looked real. Then she walked out of the bathroom and gently shook Brandon's shoulder. "Morning, husband," she said softly. Brandon opened his eyes and smiled at her, and for a moment the expression looked so genuine that Nicole almost doubted what she had heard. But then she remembered the words, "Her trust is our greatest asset." "Morning, wife," he said, pulling her down for a kiss. "Where did you disappear to last night? I looked everywhere for you." "I got talking to one of my cousins and lost track of time," Nicole lied smoothly. "It was easy, too easy. When I finally came up, you were out cold. I didn't want to wake you. You should have. I wanted our wedding night to be special. We have plenty of nights ahead of us," Nicole said. "Right now, I just want breakfast. I'm starving." Brandon laughed and kissed her again. "That's my girl. Always thinking about food. My girl." The words made Nicole's skin crawl, but she kept her smile in place. She was not his girl. She was not his anything. She was the woman who was going to take everything from him, just like he planned to do to her. But he would never see it coming. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of Nicole's life. Every morning she woke up next to Brandon and fought the urge to scream the truth in his face. Every night she lay beside him and listened to his breathing, wondering how the same mouth that told her he loved her could also plot her destruction. But she held it together. She smiled when he kissed her goodbye in the morning. She asked about his day when he came home. She played the role of happy newlywed so perfectly that even she started to wonder if she was losing her mind. The only thing keeping her sane was the work happening behind the scenes. James moved quickly and quietly. Within the first week, every password and security code at Nicole's company was changed. Brandon's board access was quietly reduced through a series of technical-looking excuses. System upgrades, security protocols, nothing personal. He complained once or twice, but Nicole soothed him with promises that it would all be restored soon. "They're just being extra careful," she told him. "You know how IT people are." "Yeah, I guess," Brandon said, though she could see the frustration behind his eyes. His plans were already being slowed and he didn't even know why. Meanwhile, Denise did research on Brandon's past. What she found was disturbing. 5 years ago, Brandon had been engaged to another woman, a young heiress named Michelle Torres. The engagement ended suddenly, and Michelle refused to speak about it publicly. But Denise had a friend who knew a friend, and eventually they got the story. "She caught him," Denise told Nicole over a private lunch. "Michelle caught him in lies about money. He had convinced her to put his name on some of her accounts, and when she started noticing discrepancies, he tried to gaslight her. She broke off the engagement and threatened to go public, but he had some embarrassing photos of her and used them as blackmail to keep her quiet." Nicole felt sick. "So I'm not even his first target." "No. You're just the first one he actually married. Which means he's getting bolder, more desperate. Or his mother is." Nicole started paying closer attention to Patricia. Her mother-in-law visited at least twice a week, always with suggestions about how Nicole should handle her finances, her company, her life. Before, Nicole had seen this as caring maternal advice. Now she recognized it for what it was: reconnaissance. "You should really let Brandon handle the investment accounts," Patricia said one afternoon over coffee. "He has such a head for numbers. And it would free you up to focus on the creative side of your business." "That's a good idea," Nicole said pleasantly. "I'll think about it." She had no intention of thinking about it, but she noted every suggestion Patricia made, every piece of information she tried to extract. It all went into the file James was building. The prenuptial agreement turned out to be exactly what Nicole feared, full of loopholes that Brandon could exploit. But James found something interesting buried in the fine print. "Look at this clause," he said, spreading the document across his desk. "It states that in the event of fraud or deception leading up to the marriage, all protections are voided and the deceived party is entitled to seek full damages. So if I can prove the marriage was based on fraud, then the prenup becomes your weapon instead of his. Everything flips in your favor." Nicole smiled for the first time in weeks. "Then let's prove it." She started documenting everything. When Brandon's phone buzzed with texts he quickly hid, she noted the times. When he took calls in the other room, she wrote it down. When he met with his mother for their frequent lunches, she had a private investigator follow them. The investigator, a quiet professional named Robert Hughes, produced results within 10 days. "Your husband meets with this woman at least twice a week," Robert reported, showing Nicole photographs. "Sometimes at her apartment, sometimes at hotels. Based on their body language, this is not a casual relationship." Nicole looked at the pictures of Brandon and Veronica together, walking arm in arm, kissing in parking lots, laughing over dinner. The images hurt, but not as much as she expected. Maybe because she already knew. Maybe because the man in those photos was a stranger now. "Is this enough?" she asked James. "It's a start. But we need more than infidelity, we need proof of the fraud itself. Communication between them discussing the plan. Financial records showing their true intent." Nicole nodded slowly, thinking. Brandon was careful with his phone, but he was less careful with his laptop. He had a home office where he sometimes worked late at night while Nicole went to bed. "I might know how to get it," she said. That night, Nicole waited until Brandon was asleep and crept into his office. His laptop was password protected, but she knew his habits. He used the same password for everything, a combination of his birthday and his mother's maiden name. She was in within seconds. His email was a gold mine. Messages to Veronica complaining about having to perform for Nicole every night. Exchanges with Patricia strategizing about when to push for access to certain accounts. Spreadsheets showing exactly how much of Nicole's wealth they planned to take and when. Nicole photographed everything. Page after page, email after email, until she had documented their entire scheme from beginning to end. Then she cleared her tracks, closed the laptop, and went back to bed. Brandon didn't stir. He had no idea that his wife had just gathered enough evidence to destroy him. Nicole lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. The day after, they would begin the next phase. The silent retreat was over. It was time to fight. James spread the printed documents across the conference table like a deck of cards showing a losing hand, Brandon's losing hand. Emails, spreadsheets, photographs, bank records. Laid out like this, the evidence was overwhelming. "This is exceptional work," James said, looking at Nicole with something like admiration. "Most people in your situation would have confronted him immediately. You showed remarkable restraint." "I learned from my mother," Nicole replied. "She always said the best revenge is making them think they're winning right up until the moment they lose." "Your mother was a smart woman." Nicole looked at the evidence and felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. These papers represented her entire marriage, every of it reduced to proof of a crime. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we prepare our case. When you file for divorce, we'll do it with all of this ready to present. Brandon and Patricia won't have time to destroy evidence or come up with excuses. We'll hit them fast and hard." "And the fraud charges?" "Those will file separately with the prosecutor's office. Criminal proceedings take longer, but the evidence here is strong. Brandon could face serious jail time." Nicole nodded. She had thought she would feel more satisfaction at this moment, but instead she just felt tired. Tired of the deception, tired of pretending, tired of being surrounded by enemies in her own home. "I want to do something first," she said, "before we file anything." James raised an eyebrow. "What did you have in mind?" "A dinner party. I want to invite everyone who matters, Brandon's business partners, Patricia's social circle, our mutual friends. I want them all there when the truth comes out." "A public exposure," James said slowly. "That's risky. If Brandon senses what's coming, he could try to get ahead of it, spin the story his way." "He won't sense anything. I've been playing the perfect wife for almost a month. He thinks I'm completely under his control." Nicole's voice hardened. "I want him to feel what I felt that night under the bed. I want him to look around a room full of people and realize that everyone knows exactly what he is." James studied her for a long moment, then smiled. "Your mother would be proud." "I hope so." They spent the next week planning every detail. The dinner party would be held at Nicole and Brandon's house, which made it even better. He would be exposed in his own home, surrounded by his own things with no escape. Nicole sent out invitations for Saturday evening, framing it as a celebration of their 1-month anniversary. "A month already," Brandon said when she told him about the party. "Time flies when you're in love." Nicole had to excuse herself to keep from laughing in his face. She also made preparations at her company. In a series of quiet meetings with her most trusted employees, she moved key projects to secure servers that Brandon couldn't access. She restructured several departments so that his limited board position had even less influence. And she began the paperwork to remove him from the board entirely, something that would go into effect the morning after the dinner party. Her employees were loyal and discreet. They had worked for Nicole's mother before her, and they loved Nicole. When she explained that there were security concerns she was addressing, they asked no questions and followed her instructions exactly. The Friday before the dinner party, Nicole had lunch with Denise to go over final details. "Are you ready for this?" Denise asked. "Tomorrow your whole life changes." "My life already changed," Nicole said. "The night of my wedding, under that bed. Tomorrow I'm just making it official." "What about after? Have you thought about what comes next?" Nicole had thought about it. In fact, she had thought about little else during all those sleepless nights lying next to Brandon. "I'm going to focus on the company," she said. "Mom built something amazing and I've been letting myself get distracted. That stops now. I'm going to make it bigger than she ever dreamed." "And personally?" "Love, relationships. I don't know. Maybe someday. But not for a while. I need to trust myself again before I can trust anyone else." Denise reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "You're the strongest person I know, Nicole. You're going to get through this." "I know I am. I just wish it didn't hurt so much." That night, Nicole stood in her closet looking at the dress she would wear tomorrow. It was black, elegant, powerful, the kind of dress a woman wears when she means business. She thought about putting it on and walking down those stairs, seeing the room full of people, knowing what was about to happen. Brandon came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "Planning your outfit for tomorrow?" he asked, his chin resting on her shoulder. Just trying to decide what makes the right statement. You always make a statement. That's what I love about you. Well, the word was a knife in her gut. Brandon, she said slowly, are you happy? With us. Of course I am. Why would you ask that? I don't know. I just want to make sure I'm doing enough. Being a good wife. He turned her around to face him, his hands on her shoulders, his eyes meeting hers. For a moment, the mask slipped and she saw something real there, not love but something like admiration. The admiration of a predator for prey that hadn't yet realized it was caught. You're perfect, he said. Everything about you is perfect. Nicole smiled at him, letting him see what he expected to see. A woman in love, a woman fooled, a woman under control. I'm glad, she said. I just want tomorrow to be special. It will be, he promised. I'll make sure of it. Yes, Nicole thought. Tomorrow will definitely be special. Just not the way you're expecting. On the morning of the dinner party, Nicole woke at dawn and went for a run. The neighborhood was quiet at that hour, the houses dark and peaceful, and she needed the silence to prepare herself for what was coming. Each step against the pavement was a rhythm she matched to her thoughts. Tonight everything changes. Tonight you get your life back. When she returned home, Brandon was still asleep. She showered and dressed in casual clothes, then went to her home office to handle some last-minute details. James had sent over the final versions of the divorce papers, ready to be filed first thing Monday morning. She reviewed them one more time, then locked them in her personal safe alongside copies of all the evidence. The caterers arrived at 2 o'clock. Nicole directed them through the house, watching as tables were set up, flowers arranged, lights adjusted. Everything had to be perfect. This wasn't just a dinner party, it was a stage, and she was setting the scene for the most important performance of her life. Brandon finally emerged around 3, looking relaxed and pleased. This is impressive, he said, surveying the preparations. You've really gone all out. I wanted it to be memorable. It will be. I'm going to go pick up my mother. She's very excited to see the house all done up like this. I'm sure she is. After he left, Nicole went upstairs to get dressed. She took her time with her makeup, her hair, her jewelry. The woman who looked back at her from the mirror was polished and powerful, showing no trace of the heartbreak underneath. Good. That's exactly what she needed. The guests began arriving at 6. Business partners Brandon had been trying to impress. Society friends of Patricia's who judged everyone by their net worth. A few of Nicole's actual friends, including Denise, who would be there for moral support. And of course, James Porter, who came early to ensure all their technical preparations were in place. The audio system is ready, he murmured to Nicole as she greeted guests at the door. Whenever you give the signal. Thank you, James. For everything. Thank me after this is over. By 7 o'clock, the house was full. Conversations hummed, glasses clinked, laughter rose and fell in waves. Nicole moved through the crowd with practiced grace, playing the hostess, accepting compliments on her home and her marriage. Brandon stayed close, his arm around her waist, his smile never wavering. Patricia held court near the fireplace, telling stories about her son's wonderful qualities to anyone who would listen. Nicole waited until everyone was seated for dinner. 30 guests arranged around tables in the formal dining room, wine poured, appetizers served. This was the moment. She stood up from her seat at the head table and clinked her glass. Everyone, if I could have your attention, please. The room quieted. All eyes turned to her. Brandon smiled up at her encouragingly. I wanted to thank you all for coming tonight, Nicole began. When Brandon and I got married a month ago, I thought I was starting the happiest chapter of my life. I thought I had found a man who loved me, a family who accepted me, a future full of promise. She paused, letting the words hang in the air. I was wrong. A murmur rippled through the room. Brandon's smile flickered. Nicole, he said cautiously. What are you? On my wedding night, Nicole continued, her voice steady, I hid under the bed in our honeymoon suite to surprise my husband. But he wasn't the first person to walk in. His mother was, along with his real girlfriend, Veronica. Patricia's face went white. Brandon started to rise from his chair. And what I heard them say changed everything. Nicole turned to James, who stood by the door. Play it. The room filled with sound. Patricia's voice, clear and unmistakable, Brandon. All the details of the scheme, broadcast through the home speaker system for every guest to hear. For 30 seconds, no one moved. Then chaos erupted. Patricia stood up, knocking over her chair. Turn that off. Turn it off right now. Brandon grabbed Nicole's arm. What is this? What are you doing? Nicole pulled away from him, her eyes cold. I'm doing what you tried to do to me. I'm exposing you for exactly what you are. The recording continued, damning word after damning word. Guests were on their feet now, voices raised in shock and outrage. Brandon's business partners looked at him with disgust. Patricia's friends backed away from her as if she had a disease. This is fake, Brandon stammered. She manufactured this. It's all lies. It's not lies and you know it, Nicole said. I have emails, texts, financial records, everything. Your whole plan documented from the beginning. The fraud, the conspiracy, the affair. All of it. You can't prove any of this. I already have. Nicole looked at him, and for the first time since that night under the bed, she let him see the real her, the anger, the hurt, the strength. Did you really think I would just let you take everything my mother built? Did you really think I was that stupid? Brandon had no answer. His face was the face of a man watching his world collapse, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Patricia pushed through the crowd toward Nicole, her composure completely gone. You little, she started, but James stepped between them. I wouldn't finish that sentence if I were you, he said calmly. Anything you say tonight can and will be used in the proceedings we're filing on Monday. Criminal fraud charges, civil suits, the works. So please by all means keep talking. Patricia closed her mouth, but her eyes burned with hatred. Nicole turned back to her guests, who stood in stunned silence. I'm sorry you had to witness this, she said. But I thought you all deserved to know the truth about the people you've been associating with. The Mitchell family built their reputation on deception and theft. Now you know what they really are. She walked out of the dining room and up the stairs without looking back. Behind her, she heard the sounds of guests leaving, doors closing, voices arguing. Brandon called her name, but she didn't stop. In her bedroom, she sat on the edge of the bed and let out a long breath. It was done. The truth was out. There was no going back now. Her phone buzzed. A text from Denise. That was incredible. I'm so proud of you. Nicole smiled, really smiled for the first time in a month. The battle wasn't over, not even close. But tonight she had won the first round, and that was enough. The aftermath of the dinner party spread through the city like wildfire. By morning, everyone who mattered knew what Brandon and Patricia had done. By Monday, the news had reached social media, and the story of the scheming husband and his mother went viral. Gold digger husband exposed, read one headline. Bride's brilliant revenge, read another. Nicole stayed out of the spotlight as much as possible, letting James handle the media inquiries while she focused on the legal proceedings. The divorce papers were filed Monday morning, along with criminal fraud charges against both Brandon and Patricia. Their assets were frozen, their bank accounts locked, their lives put on hold while the justice system began its slow work. Brandon tried to contact Nicole constantly, calls, texts, emails, even showing up at her company office. She blocked his number and had security turn him away at the door. She had nothing to say to him. There was nothing he could say to her. Patricia was even worse. She actually tried to get mutual friends to intervene on her behalf, claiming that Nicole had misunderstood, that the recording was taken out of context. But no one was buying it. The evidence was too clear, the scheme too obvious. Patricia's social circle evaporated overnight. Invitations stopped coming. Doors that had always been open were suddenly closed. Nicole's attorney filed the civil suit 2 weeks after the dinner party. It was a masterpiece of legal strategy, claiming damages for fraud, emotional distress, and conspiracy. The prenuptial agreement, which Brandon had thought would protect him, was voided under the fraud clause and turned into a weapon against him. Everything he had hoped to gain from the marriage became leverage Nicole could use to take everything he had. The first court hearing was brief but satisfying. Brandon showed up with his own attorney, a clearly less experienced lawyer than James, and tried to argue that Nicole had overreacted, that their marriage was real, that he really did love her. James dismantled every claim with evidence. Emails in which Brandon called Nicole his mark. Texts to Veronica complaining about having to touch his wife. Financial projections showing exactly how Brandon and Patricia planned to drain Nicole's accounts over the next 5 years. The judge looked at Brandon with undisguised contempt. Mr. Mitchell, the evidence against you is substantial. I'm setting a trial date for 3 months from now, and until then, you are prohibited from contacting Mrs. Mitchell or coming within 500 feet of her home or place of business. Do you understand? Your Honor, that's my home too. You should have thought about that before you turned your marriage into a criminal enterprise. The restraining order stands. Brandon left the courthouse looking like a man who had just watched his future burn to the ground. Nicole walked out with her head high and her lawyer beside her. That went well, James said. It went perfectly. The next few weeks were a flurry of depositions, document reviews, and legal strategy sessions. Nicole threw herself into the work, grateful for the distraction. When she wasn't dealing with the divorce, she was at her company, pushing projects forward, meeting with investors, making plans for expansion. Her employees rallied around her. Word of what Brandon had tried to do had spread through the office, and everyone was furious on her behalf. They worked harder, stayed later, went the extra mile to make sure Nicole knew they supported her. "We've got your back," her head of engineering told her one afternoon. "Whatever you need." "Thank you," Nicole said, genuinely touched. "What I need is for us to have our best quarter ever. Can we do that?" "Absolutely." And they did. The numbers that quarter exceeded all projections, driven by the launch of a new product that Nicole had fast-tracked specifically to prove that her company didn't need Brandon Mitchell to succeed. The tech press covered the launch extensively, and the coverage was glowing. Meanwhile, Brandon's life continued to fall apart. Without access to Nicole's money, he had no way to save his mother's company. Within 6 weeks of the dinner party, Mitchell Industries filed for bankruptcy. Creditors swooped in, assets were seized, and the business that Patricia's husband had spent his life building was gone. Veronica predictably disappeared. The moment it became clear there was no money to be had, she stopped taking Brandon's calls. Nicole heard through the grapevine that she had moved to another city and was already looking for her next wealthy target. "Fitting," Denise said when she heard. "They deserve each other." "They deserve worse," Nicole replied. "But I'll settle for this." The criminal trial began in August. Nicole was called to testify about what she had heard that night under the bed, about the evidence she had gathered, about the pain and betrayal she had suffered. She spoke clearly and calmly, letting the facts speak for themselves. Brandon's attorney tried to trip her up on cross-examination, but she was prepared. Every question he asked, she answered directly. Every attempt to twist her words, she corrected immediately. "Mrs. Mitchell, isn't it true that you invaded your husband's privacy by accessing his laptop without permission?" "I accessed a computer in my own home to investigate what I believed was criminal fraud against me. I would do it again." "And you feel no remorse about publicly humiliating Mr. Mitchell?" "I feel remorse that I ever trusted him. I feel remorse for every moment I spent believing his lies. But exposing the truth? No. I will never feel remorse for that." The jury was only out for 4 hours before returning with a verdict: guilty on all counts. Brandon faced up to 10 years in prison. Patricia, who had been tried separately, got 7. Nicole didn't attend the sentencing. She didn't need to. The court had already given her everything she needed: validation that she had been wronged and justice for the people who had wronged her. She was having lunch with Denise when the news came through that Brandon had been sentenced to 6 years. "How do you feel?" Denise asked. Nicole thought about it for a long moment. She thought about that night under the bed, about the weeks of pretending, about the dinner party and the court hearings and all the pain in between. "I feel free," she finally said. "For the first time in years, I feel completely free." The legal proceedings against Brandon and Patricia stretched across several months, each court date bringing new revelations and deeper consequences. Nicole had prepared for a marathon, and that's exactly what she got. But with every step forward, she felt the weight of the last 2 years lifting from her shoulders. Brandon's defense strategy was predictable: deny, deflect, and paint Nicole as the real villain. His attorney argued that Nicole had entrapped him, that she had been cold and distant in their marriage, that any reasonable husband would have sought comfort elsewhere. The arguments were desperate and contradictory, and the judge saw right through them. "Counsel, are you seriously arguing that your client's infidelity justifies fraud?" the judge asked during one particularly ridiculous motion hearing. "Your Honor, I'm arguing that the full picture." "The full picture is in these documents." The judge cut him off, holding up one of the evidence files. "And the picture is very clear. Please don't waste the court's time." Patricia's defense was even weaker. She tried to claim that she was just a concerned mother trying to help her son find happiness, that the conversations Nicole recorded were taken out of context, that she never intended for anyone to be harmed. The jury didn't buy it for a second. The emails showing her coordinating the entire scheme from the beginning were too damning. During Patricia's trial, something unexpected happened. Other victims came forward. It started with Michelle Torres, Brandon's former fiancée. She had heard about the case and decided she was tired of staying silent. She contacted James and offered to testify about her own experience with Brandon: the lies, the financial manipulation, the blackmail when she tried to leave. I was afraid before, Michelle told Nicole when they met. He had those photos and I didn't want them getting out. But then I saw what you did, how you fought back, and I thought, if she can be that brave, maybe I can too. Her testimony added another layer to the prosecution's case, showing that Brandon's scheme against Nicole wasn't a one-time thing but a pattern of predatory behavior. 2 other women came forward after that. A former girlfriend Brandon had convinced to invest in a fake business venture, and a colleague Patricia had defrauded years earlier using similar tactics. They're serial predators, James told Nicole. This is what they do. They find vulnerable people and exploit them. You just happen to be smart enough to stop them. The civil trial concluded in September with a judgment entirely in Nicole's favor. Not only was she granted immediate divorce, but she was also awarded damages for fraud and emotional distress. Brandon was ordered to pay her a substantial sum, not that he had anything left to pay with. His assets had already been seized to cover other debts, and he would be spending the next several years in prison regardless. Patricia's civil judgment was even harsher. As the mastermind of the scheme, she was held liable for the full extent of the damages. Her house was sold, her bank accounts emptied, her remaining assets liquidated. The woman who had once presided over high society gatherings was left with nothing but a prison sentence and a permanent reputation as a con artist. On the day the civil trial ended, Nicole walked out of the courthouse and stood on the steps, looking up at the sky. The sun was shining, the air was crisp, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt light. Really, truly light. James came to stand beside her. Congratulations, he said. You did it. We did it. I couldn't have gotten through this without you. You would have found a way. You're a fighter, Nicole. Your mother would be proud. Nicole nodded, her eyes stinging. She thought about her mother often these days, her strength, her wisdom, her refusal to let anyone take advantage of her. Nicole had inherited more than a company from her. She had inherited a backbone. What happens now? She asked. Now you live your life. Build your company. Maybe when you're ready, let yourself be happy again. Happy? Nicole repeated, testing the word. That sounds nice. You deserve it. After everything you've been through, you deserve every good thing that comes your way. Nicole smiled. She thought about the future. Not a future with Brandon in it, thank goodness, but a future she would build for herself. A future she would choose. Thank you, James, she said. For everything. My pleasure. Now go celebrate. You've earned it. That night, Nicole had dinner with Denise at their favorite restaurant. They ordered too much food and drank too much wine and laughed until their sides hurt. It felt like the old days before Brandon, before the grief, before everything got complicated. To Nicole, Denise said, raising her glass. The strongest woman I know. To us, Nicole replied. For getting through this together. They clinked glasses and drank, and Nicole felt something settle inside her. After all the chaos and pain and fighting, she finally felt at peace. The war was over. She had won. Now it was time to build something new. The collapse of Brandon Mitchell was swift and thorough. By the time he began serving his prison sentence, there was nothing left of the life he had tried to build on Nicole's stolen wealth. His business connections had abandoned him. His social circle had disowned him. Even his own extended family wanted nothing to do with him. Nicole followed the news of his downfall with detached satisfaction. Not glee, that would require more emotional investment than she was willing to give. Just satisfaction that justice had been done and that her mother's legacy was protected. Patricia's fall was even more dramatic. She had spent decades building her reputation as a pillar of high society, and now that reputation was in ruins. The women she had called friends cut her off completely. The charities she had chaired removed her name from their boards. Her photograph, once featured in the society pages of every major publication, now only appeared in stories about fraud and deceit. During her trial, Patricia had broken down on the stand and begged for mercy, claiming she had only been trying to save her family's business. The judge was unmoved. You tried to save your business by destroying an innocent woman, the judge said. You orchestrated a campaign of fraud and manipulation that lasted years. You showed no mercy to your victim, and you will receive none from this court. 7 years. That was Patricia's sentence. 7 years in prison for conspiracy, fraud, and various other charges. By the time she got out, she would be in her 70s with no money, no friends, and no reputation. The society queen would end her days in obscurity. Veronica, the woman who had waited 5 years for Brandon to deliver on his promises, ended up with nothing. After the scandal broke, she fled to another state, but word of her involvement followed her. Two different men she approached for relationships did background checks and discovered her history as a co-conspirator in a fraud scheme. Her dating prospects dried up overnight. Nicole heard through the grapevine that Veronica had taken a job as a waitress and was living in a small apartment outside Houston. Part of her felt a grim satisfaction at this news. A larger part felt nothing at all. Veronica had been a tool in Brandon's scheme, just like Nicole. The difference was that Veronica had chosen to be used, while Nicole had been deceived. As for Brandon himself, prison was exactly the humbling experience he deserved. A man who had spent his adult life manipulating wealthy women now found himself at the bottom of a different hierarchy entirely. His charm meant nothing behind bars. His good looks attracted the wrong kind of attention. His expensive education and refined manners just made him a target for inmates who resented anyone who thought they were better than others. He wrote to Nicole twice during his first month inside. She didn't open the letters, just forwarded them to James as potential evidence of any additional schemes. James reported that they were exactly what he expected. Self-pitying complaints about his situation, thinly veiled attempts to make Nicole feel guilty, and not a single word of genuine apology. "He still doesn't get it," James said. "He still thinks he's the victim. He'll have 6 years to figure it out," Nicole replied. "Not my problem." With the legal battles behind her, Nicole threw herself fully into her work. Her company, which her mother had built from nothing 30 years earlier, was poised for major growth. The tech industry was booming, and the products Nicole's team had developed were perfectly positioned to capitalize on it. She started working longer hours, taking more meetings, pushing harder than she ever had before. Some nights she didn't leave the office until midnight, and some mornings she was back before dawn. Her employees worried about her, and Denise staged an intervention after Nicole missed 3 dinner plans in a row. "This isn't healthy," Denise said. "You're running yourself into the ground." "I'm building something," Nicole replied. "This is what building something looks like." "You already built something. You won. Brandon is in prison, Patricia is in prison, you got everything they tried to take from you. What more do you need?" Nicole didn't have a good answer for that. She just knew that if she kept moving, kept working, kept pushing forward, she didn't have to think about anything else. She didn't have to think about the fact that she had been married and divorced in the space of 6 months. She didn't have to think about the fact that the man she had loved, the man she thought had loved her, had been a complete fabrication. She didn't have to think about how lonely her big empty house felt at night. But Denise was right. She couldn't run forever. One evening, Nicole was working late in her office when she looked up and saw herself reflected in the window. The woman staring back at her looked tired, thin, older than her years. She looked like someone who had forgotten what it felt like to enjoy life. Nicole put down her pen and leaned back in her chair. She thought about her mother, who had worked just as hard to build this company but who had always made time for the things that mattered. Family dinners, weekend trips, friends and hobbies and laughter. Her mother had lived fully, not just professionally. "I don't want to end up alone," Nicole said to her reflection. "I don't want to be so afraid of being hurt that I never let anyone in again." The reflection didn't answer, but Nicole knew what she needed to do. She needed to start living again, really living, not just working. She needed to open herself up to new possibilities, even if that meant risking new pain. Starting tomorrow, she would make changes. She would work reasonable hours. She would keep her plans with friends. She would leave room in her life for something unexpected. She didn't know it yet, but something unexpected was already on its way. 6 months after the trial ended, Nicole's company launched its most ambitious product yet, a software platform that revolutionized how small businesses managed their operations. The launch event was held at a downtown convention center, with industry press, investors, and potential clients filling the auditorium. Nicole stood backstage, going over her presentation notes for the 100th time. She had given dozens of speeches over the years, but this one felt different. This was her first major public appearance since the scandal, and she knew everyone would be watching not just to see the product but to see her. Was she damaged? Weakened? Broken? She intended to show them she was none of those things. The lights went down and Nicole walked out onto the stage. The audience applauded and she let the sound wash over her. Then she began to speak. She talked about her mother's vision for the company. She talked about the team of brilliant people who had built this product. She talked about what the platform could do for businesses and why she believed in it so deeply. She did not talk about Brandon or Patricia or anything that had happened in the last 2 years. That chapter was closed. This was a new one. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. People rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. Nicole smiled, a real smile, the first one that hadn't felt forced in a long time, and took a bow. Afterward, there was a reception where potential clients could try the product and meet the team. Nicole worked the room, shaking hands, answering questions, doing the part of her job she had always secretly enjoyed most: connecting with people. That's when she met Michael. He was standing near the demo stations, watching one of her engineers walk through the software's features. Tall, with warm brown skin and kind eyes, he looked genuinely interested in what he was seeing rather than just networking like most of the other guests. "What do you think?" Nicole asked, approaching him. He turned and smiled. "I think this is exactly what my company needs. We've been looking for something like this for months." "That's good to hear. What company are you with?" "Foster Architecture. We're a mid-size firm, about 40 employees. I'm the managing partner." Nicole shook his hand. "Nicole Crawford. Nice to meet you. I know who you are. I've been following your work for a while." He held up a hand quickly. "Not in a weird way. I mean professionally. My sister is in tech and she's been talking about your company for years. Says you're one of the most innovative leaders in the industry. Your sister has good taste." Michael laughed. "I'll tell her you said that." They talked for almost an hour. Not just about the software, but about architecture, business, life. Michael was smart and funny and genuinely interested in what Nicole had to say, not just waiting for his turn to talk. He asked thoughtful questions and actually listened to the answers. By the time the reception ended, Nicole realized she was disappointed it was over. "I should get your contact information," Michael said, "for the software demo. My operations team will want to see it." "Of course." Nicole handed him her card. "Have them reach out to schedule something." He took the card and looked at it for a moment. Then he looked at her. "Can I be honest with you?" he asked. "Please." "The software looks great and my company will probably buy it. But that's not really why I want to stay in touch." He met her eyes directly. "I'd like to get to know you better. Not as a business contact. As a person." Nicole felt something flutter in her chest. Something she hadn't felt in a long time and wasn't sure she wanted to feel again. But there was nothing calculated in Michael's expression. No agenda behind his eyes. He was just a person who found her interesting, and that was nice. "I'm not in a great place for dating right now," she said honestly. "I just went through something complicated and I'm still figuring things out." "I understand. No pressure." He put her card in his pocket. "But if you ever want to grab coffee and just talk, no expectations, no agenda, I'm around. Take your time." He gave her a final smile and walked away, and Nicole stood there for a moment, holding her breath. Then she let it out slowly. Maybe someday. But not yet. She threw herself back into work, but this time in a healthier way. She left the office at reasonable hours. She kept her dinner plans with Denise. She started running again in the mornings, feeling her body grow stronger, her mind clearer. And she thought about Michael. More than she wanted to admit. He had done exactly what he promised. Not pushed, not pressured. Just sent occasional messages checking in, sharing articles he thought she might find interesting, generally being kind without asking for anything in return. 3 months after the launch, Nicole finally texted him. "Coffee still on the table?" His response came within minutes. "Absolutely. Name the time and place." They met at a small cafe near her office. The conversation picked up right where it had left off at the reception. Easy, natural, like they had known each other for years instead of months. Michael told her about growing up in Chicago, about his path to architecture, about his dream of designing buildings that brought communities together. Nicole told him about her mother, about the company, about what the last few years had been like. She didn't tell him everything, not yet, but she told him enough. And he didn't flinch. He didn't try to fix her or judge her or make it about himself. He just listened and said, "That sounds incredibly hard. I'm sorry you went through that." "Thank you," Nicole said. "I'm sorry I didn't reach out sooner. I just needed to be sure I was ready." "And are you? Ready?" She thought about it. She thought about the woman she had been before Brandon. Trusting, open, maybe a little naive. She thought about the woman she had become after. Stronger, wiser, more careful. She thought about the woman she wanted to be now. Someone who could be both strong and open, who could protect herself without closing herself off. "I think I'm getting there," she said finally. Michael smiled. "Then let's take it slow. No rush. Whatever you're comfortable with." And they did take it slow. Coffee dates became lunch dates, became occasional dinners. They talked and laughed and learned about each other. Michael was patient and kind and never once made Nicole feel pressured or rushed. He seemed to genuinely enjoy her company without needing anything from her. It was so different from Brandon that sometimes Nicole couldn't believe it was real. But it was real. Michael was real. And slowly, carefully, Nicole began to let herself trust again. 1 year after the dinner party that had exposed Brandon's scheme, Nicole stood in a courtroom for the last time. This was the final hearing, a formality to close out the remaining legal proceedings and ensure that all judgments had been satisfied. Brandon wasn't there, he was still in prison, but his attorney was present, looking tired and defeated. All matters have been resolved in favor of the plaintiff, the judge announced. This case is officially closed. Nicole shook James's hand and walked out of the courthouse into the sunlight. It was over. Really, truly over. The man who had tried to steal her life had lost his own, and she was free. That evening, she hosted a small gathering at her home. Her home, fully hers now that Brandon had no claim to it. Denise was there, along with a few other close friends. James came by briefly to offer his congratulations. And Michael was there, standing beside her as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Speech. Denise called out, clinking her glass. The woman of the hour must make a speech. Nicole laughed and shook her head, but everyone else took up the chant. Finally, she held up her hands in surrender. Okay, but just a short one. She looked around the room at the faces of the people who had supported her through the worst year of her life. Her eyes stung and she let them. A year ago, I discovered that my entire marriage was a lie, she began. The person I thought loved me was just using me, and I felt like the biggest fool in the world. I thought I would never trust anyone again. I thought I would never be happy again. She paused, collecting herself. But here's what I've learned. Betrayal doesn't have to define you. Being hurt doesn't make you weak. What matters is what you do next. You can let it destroy you, or you can let it make you stronger. You can spend your life being afraid, or you can take a risk and open your heart again. She looked at Michael, who smiled at her with so much warmth that she felt it in her bones. I'm not going to lie and say I'm completely healed. I still have hard days. I still have moments when I wonder if I can ever really trust again. But I'm trying. I'm putting myself out there. And I think that's all any of us can do. She raised her glass. To all of you for being there for me. To my mother who taught me how to fight. And to new beginnings. To new beginnings, the room echoed. Later, after the guests had gone, Nicole and Michael sat on her back porch, looking up at the stars. The night was quiet and clear, and Nicole felt a deep sense of peace that she hadn't experienced in years. Can I ask you something? Michael said. Of course. Do you ever think about him? Brandon? Nicole considered the question. Sometimes. Not with anger anymore, just sadness, I guess. Sadness for the person I thought he was and the life I thought we would have. But that person never existed and that life was never real. So mostly I try not to think about him at all. That makes sense. What I think about more is who I am now because of what happened. I'm stronger than I was. I know what I want. I know what I deserve. She turned to look at him. I know that I deserve someone who loves me for real, not someone who's just pretending. Michael took her hand. You deserve that and more. And I hope you know that's what I'm offering. Not a game, not a scheme, just me. Wanting to be with you. I know. That's why I'm here. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, holding hands and watching the stars. Then Michael turned to her with a slight smile. So, I've been thinking, he said. That sounds dangerous. He laughed. Hear me out. We've been together for 6 months now, and I know that's not very long, and I know you've been through a lot. But I also know that when you find the right person, you just know. And Nicole, you're my person. You're it for me. Nicole's heart was pounding. What are you saying? Michael reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Nicole's breath caught in her throat. I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow, he said quickly, or even next year. I'm just asking you to say yes to a future together. Whenever you're ready, however long it takes. I'll wait. He opened the box, revealing a simple, elegant ring that somehow matched her taste perfectly. Nicole Crawford, will you marry me? A year ago, if someone had told Nicole she would be getting engaged again, she would have laughed in their face. The idea of trusting another man, making herself that vulnerable again? Impossible. Unthinkable. But here she was. And the man kneeling before her was nothing like Brandon. Michael was honest and kind and patient. He had never pushed her, never tried to change her, never made her feel like she wasn't enough. He loved her for exactly who she was. And she loved him too. She had been afraid to admit it even to herself, but it was true. Yes, she whispered. Michael's face broke into a huge smile. Yes. Yes. She was laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I'll marry you. Not tomorrow, not next year, but eventually. Yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a kiss, and Nicole felt something shift inside her. The last piece of the wall she had built around her heart crumbled away, and for the first time in years, she felt completely open, completely ready. She had been betrayed, lied to, used. She had hit rock bottom and thought she would never get back up. But she had fought back. She had taken control of her own story. And now here she was, standing in the ruins of her old life, ready to build something new, something better, something real. The revenge was complete. Not because Brandon was in prison or Patricia was disgraced, but because Nicole was happy. Truly, deeply happy. She had taken everything they tried to steal from her and multiplied it 1,000-fold.